Hello, welcome to this webinar about the Low Energy Apartment Futures project. My name is Tessa Clark. I'm the coordinator for the LEAF project. I'm from Changeworks, which is an environmental charity based in Scotland in the UK. So this webinar is being carried out in conjunction with Build Up. It's the final event for the Low Energy Apartment Futures. So today what we'd like to do is share the results of the project and give you an overview of what we've done and what we've learned. So I'm going to be the host for the webinar today. First off, I'm going to present a short introduction and overview about the project to tell you what we did, and then I'll be passing on to my colleagues Manuel and Bridget, who will be going over the results and the policy recommendations from the project. I'll also be leading on the question and answer sessions today. There'll be one at the end of my presentation in about 15 minutes, and there'll be one right at the end of the webinar as well. So as I said, the introduction that I'm going to do today is the overview of the LEAF project. So I want to tell you a little bit about what we aim to do in the project, what we actually did do, the methodology we used, and how we did this. So the project was focused on apartment blocks under multiple ownership across Europe, and our aim was to address energy efficiency and renewable energy in these types of buildings. The project was a 3-year project. It started in 2013 and is finishing at the end of this month. The project website, I've put the address there, but I've put it in quite a few slides, so hopefully you'll have a chance to write that down if you haven't yet visited our website. There's a whole load of reports and resources available on the website, so I'd encourage you to go there. The project was co-funded by the Intelligent Energy Europe programme and also by local co-funders. So the LEAF project had 8 partner organisations. These are displayed on the map here. So we had partners from the UK, France, Sweden, Hungary, Austria and Germany. So first wanted to give you just a bit of a background as to why we decided to do this project. So as you all know, there's lots of challenges around energy consumption in Europe at the moment. And these are 3 things that we wanted to look at: energy consumption, carbon emissions and fuel poverty. The EU currently has 2020 targets to increase energy efficiency by 20%, increase the amount coming from renewable energy by 20% and decrease CO2 emissions by 20%. What we know is that 25% of EU emissions actually come from homes, so tackling energy use in homes is really important if we want to meet our carbon targets. And then the second statistic I wanted to show was that 43% of Europeans live in apartments. So there's no way we're going to be able to achieve our carbon targets in the domestic sector unless we look at apartments. So a really important part of doing this. However, before we started the project, we knew that there were a lot of barriers to making flats and apartments more energy efficient. So we knew this was a really important thing to be able to tackle. Okay, so I want to touch on what we did during the project. So this gives a very brief overview as to what we did in the LEAF project. First of all, we carried out background research that informed the rest of the project, and particularly part 2, which was creating toolkits. I'll talk about the toolkits in more detail in a minute, but the toolkits were basically aimed at anybody who might want to make apartment blocks more energy efficient. What we learned is this does vary across different European countries, but for instance, housing associations or property managers or owners who might be interested. We wanted to create resources that we could use in the project, but could also be used at the end of the project to make sure that apartment blocks were being retrofitted. We then worked with 24 case study buildings across Europe to look at what could be achieved in these buildings and also to identify barriers, challenges and the successes. We carried out an evaluation of the project, which I'll talk briefly about, and then Manuel will present the results later on. And then lastly, as a result of the evaluation, we formed a series of policy recommendations, and Bridget will present these at the end of the webinar. So first off, we did background research. The idea of this was to establish the current context. As I said, we had multiple countries involved across Europe in the LEAF project, and although tackling apartment blocks, the energy efficiency of apartment blocks was important in all of these countries, there were differences in the types of buildings, the type of ownership structures, lots of circumstantial differences that made quite a big difference to how we were going to tackle this problem. What we did identify from this background research that there are a lot of barriers that are the same in different countries. So, for example, energy performance certificates. These were quite, there were difficulties of energy performance certificates in all the countries. In addition, the difficulties of engaging multiple owners was a problem in every country. However, as I mentioned, there are differences between countries, such as each country has different ways of managing multi-ownership properties, and we had to take that into consideration before we design the rest of the project. If you're interested in learning more about our background research, there are 2 reports available on the LEAF website. So creating the toolkits. We created 2 toolkits as part of the LEAF project, the engagement toolkit and the technical toolkit. So as I mentioned before, these were support tools for improving the energy efficiency of apartment blocks. And as I also mentioned, these are aimed at any stakeholders who might be interested in carrying out retrofits. It was quite difficult because the target audience differed in every country. So in some countries, property managers or owner communities were the target audience, whereas in other countries, housing associations and local authorities were the main audience. However, what this does stress is how many different stakeholders there are involved in these projects and how it's important for everybody to be engaged. The technical toolkit and the engagement toolkit were developed, they're country-specific, available for the countries that were involved in the LEAF project. So firstly, the engagement toolkit. This is a PDF document that can be downloaded from the LEAF website. It provides support and advice on how to retrofit apartment blocks. And the way that it provides advice is basically a step-by-step guide from very first, how do you engage residents, how do you identify what measures to install, to then how do you actually go about the retrofit process in terms of finding installers, finding quotes, and evaluation. These have been adapted to the different countries, so there's country-specific information within the documents, and that includes further sources of information, such as funding or advice provision specific to that country. We then have the technical toolkit. So the technical toolkit contains 4 sections, as outlined here, and I'm just going to briefly explain what is in each of those 4 sections. So firstly, what is an energy performance certificate? So this is, part A is a downloadable PDF document that provides guidance on EPCs in every country. So the type of guidance it provides is a description of what EPCs are, what sort of information they provide, how much it costs to get an EPC carried out, how long they're valid, and where an EPC assessor can be sought. The reason that we decided to talk about energy performance certificates is this is the main way of identifying improvement measures in apartment blocks. Section B of the technical toolkit, this is an interactive tool. So for this, the user has to input data that they've got from their EPC. They input this into the tool. I'm just going to go forwards, and I've got a small screenshot of what the tool looks like. So the user gets the information from the EPC, puts that into the tool, as shown here, puts the details in, and I'm just going to go back to my previous slide. And then once they put that information in, they will get a tailored document that outlines more information about these recommended measures. So detailed descriptions about what the recommended measures are, where the measures might be suitable and considerations, required permissions such as planning permission or building warrants, and the payback times in terms of costs and savings. If I just go back to the screenshot, you can see that also there's the ability to look in at different packages of measures, so the user can play around with different types of packages. I also wanted to mention the Communal EPC Tool, which is part of the technical toolkit. So in the UK and France, we have EPCs for individual apartments rather than a whole block EPC. In France, they do have both depending on the situation, but in the UK, we only have individual apartment EPCs. In the other countries involved in LEAF, they have whole block EPCs. So this is a simple Excel tool that enables multiple EPCs from individual apartments to be pulled together into one whole block EPC, and that can be downloaded from the technical toolkit. Section C of the technical toolkit is all about the impact of the user behaviour. So this looks at, okay, you've got residents living in this building. Generally, are they high energy users or low energy users? And this is an interactive part of the tool where the person carrying out the assessment can estimate how many of the residents are underusers and how many are overusers, and then this highlights what impact this might have on the energy savings and payback times. The document also provides advice on how energy use can be reduced through behaviour. Lastly, we have section D, which is about possible additional savings. So again, this is a downloadable PDF document, and this provides advice on other energy savings you may be able to get from apartment blocks that aren't normally included in EPCs. So this includes the heating of common stairways, lighting of common areas, and elevators or lifts. And there are other examples in there, but those are some of the things it includes. So to summarise, the technical toolkit that is available for each of the 6 countries involved in the LEAF project. And if you go to the LEAF website, you'll be able to access the tool there and play around with it. So once we'd done the background research and we'd created the toolkits, we were then working with case studies. We actually started working with the case studies right from the start of the project because we knew that this was going to be it was going to take some time to develop the work with them. So we had 24 buildings across Europe, which was 4 buildings in each of the LEAF partner countries. And I'm going to go on to explain a little bit about what we did with the case studies, but I just wanted to highlight at this point that case study reports will be available on the website by the end of this week, and they detail in quite detail what we did with each of those case studies, what results we achieved, and the barriers and successes in each of the case studies. Because actually all of the case studies were different, and whilst we have drawn some lessons from all of them, actually there are quite a few different lessons learned within the case studies. So just to briefly sort of say what we did with the case studies, this is one of our examples from France that you can see pre-installation of external wall insulation and post. So the work with every case study did differ slightly, but the main process was, first off, engaging the residents or engaging the owners, property managers, the key stakeholders of that building, getting them engaged in the project. And they were all interested in joining the project for different reasons, such as reducing their fuel bills or improving warmth. We then worked with the case study buildings to identify suitable energy efficiency measures. This was through energy performance certificates and, where required, further building surveys and thermal audits. We then worked with the residents, owners, property managers to progress those energy efficiency measures. So we provided advice on funding availability, other support such as other information that the owners might need, how much measures were going to cost, what they might save, practical considerations. And then we helped the owners to agree what measures they wanted to install. Now, not all of our case studies got to this point, but where they did, we were then able to support them through the installation process, and in many cases provide behaviour change advice through home visits. In the next presentation, Manuel will be presenting the results of these case studies. So the sort of fourth bit of the LEAF project was carrying out the results and evaluation of the project. So first off, the results of the case studies. So we have summarised what the savings were from these 24 case studies in terms of energy savings, fuel bill savings and CO2 savings. We also carried out surveys with the residents and the stakeholders, the property managers involved in those case studies. And so we've got some feedback on them of how successful the project was, why they were motivated to join it, and what the difficulties were. We then also carried out a stakeholder evaluation. So this was with some stakeholders who'd been involved in the LEAF case study buildings, but then wider stakeholders, so local authorities, government officials, anybody relevant to retrofitting apartment blocks. So the stakeholder evaluation was carried out via workshops and interviews. We got feedback on the toolkits, which was really important, and also, as I say, perspectives of retrofitting multi-apartment blocks in terms of what are the barriers and how can we overcome those barriers. And as I say, Manuel will provide the results of all this evaluation in the next presentation. And then the last bit of the LEAF project was creating these policy recommendations. So we've created a series of policy recommendations on both the EU level and the partner country level. And Bridget is going to present all of those policy recommendations in the final presentation today. So thank you very much for listening. That was a very brief overview of the LEAF project. I've got, again, the project website there. We now have around 5 to 10 minutes to take questions. So I will